Okay, so someone asked if I could make a quick video showing how to use some of the debugging tools of IntelliJ. So that's what I'm going to do. So here we have the Game of Life project, and if you click the little green triangle here, Game of Life starts running like normal. But instead of clicking that triangle, what we're going to do is click this little green bug, which puts us in debug mode and lets us do a couple of other things. So, like before, the window pops up, starts running, but now, if we want to, we can add what's called a breakpoint somewhere in the code. So for example, here in the creature handler code, if I'm trying to debug, say, how a certain creature is moving, I can put a breakpoint here on this line. When the execution of the code reaches that line, it'll pause and you'll see this debugger window pop up. This will show me any variable that's currently in the scope of this code and what its value is. So for example, I'm looping through the list of creatures, and every time I do, I store the current creature in the variable C. And when I've looked down here at this variable window, I can see the current thing in C is a plant. And I can expand this and see its location in the grid, what its current health value is. I can expand the location variable and get its X and Y coordinates. I can even modify those. So if I right click this, click set value, I can kill this plant. So sad, goodbye plant. And so I can inspect those variables to see what's going on. The other thing I can do, let me bring my plant back to life before I forget. The other thing I can do are kind of step through the code one line at a time using these commands. So this is called the step over command. And so you can see I'm currently on this line and I'm asking the question, is C an instance of movable? Now I know plant is not, so when I say step over that line, it's going to execute it and see that plant is not an instance of movable, and this will be false, and so it'll just skip this if statement. And then it'll say, is this an instance of aggressor? Plant is also not an instance of aggressor, so it's going to skip over that. Now I'm at the end of the loop, and you can see this has been highlighted up here to kind of match that brace. And so if I click this again, now I'm back up here at the top of the loop. I grab the next creature, and it's also a plant. Now if I want, I can just kind of, I'm going to change, instead of stopping on this line, I'm going to move my breakpoint up here so it'll always stop at this. And instead of stepping through each instant or each line, I'm going to go over here and use this button, which says continue until you hit the breakpoint again. And so you can see the value for C is going to change here. And so I'm still in the plants. I'm going to keep clicking until I get out of the plants and get into something more interesting. Click, click. There we go. Now I'm on an animal. So this is now holding an animal. And you can see, the creatures array here shows up, and it kind of shows me here all the plants in it, here all the animals. I can pick a certain animal and see what its location is and health is. If there were wolves in there, those would show up as well. So now I want to show you this button. This is the step into button. Rather than stepping over a line of code, I can, if there's a method call on that line, I can click step into, and it'll take me to that method. And since this is the animal is a live method, because it's an animal that we're currently looking at, it'll go in here and I can look at the animal code and its current state and see that its health is, if I hover over this, is 1. And so it's going to say, hey, is your health greater than 0? And I'll step over that. And so is alive will come back as true. And so this will evaluate to false since it's got a little not operator there. And so we'll skip over that. Now my animal, is it an instance of aware? And if we go back to animal, we can see that it does not implement the aware interface. And so it's going to skip over that. But it is an instance of movable. And so when I go into this, so if I go and step over that, I'll be inside the if statement. And I'm going to, if I click step over, it'll just execute this method and move on. But I'm going to click step into, and it'll go into the handle move method of creature handler. I'm going to cast my animal into the mover interface. Now notice that IntelliJ knows that this is still an animal, even though I'm using the movable interface here. I'm going to step into the move method, and I'm going to execute this first line, which gets me a random integer. I'm not going to click step into here because I don't want to go into the random integer code. I'm going to step over that. And so I've got my random integer, which in this case is 1. And so then you've got the current location, and the x value of that location is going to be subtracted by 1. So it's currently 7. If I step over that, I can see the location's x value down here changed, or I can hover over it. And so this is just kind of a handy way of doing debugging and kind of stepping through line by line to see what's happening with different parts of the code, and watching how it'll jump around to different files and classes, and just another way to see what's going on in your program.